found, believe it or not, a printed out email.
Bloody hell.
I know, right? Scott has,
which you've got on your screen.
Yeah. Scott says, for no reason whatsoever, I've started to think about the quality of referees in this country. It seems pretty inconceivable to me that most of the players playing in the Premier League come from abroad, yet we only have one foreign referee officiating games in what is supposed to be the best league in the world. That's Jared Gillett, who's Australian, if you're wondering. Do you think it's time to start looking further afield and bring in officials who are the best in the world at what they do, rather than keep on looking inwards?
Quick answer from me, no.
No? You want to keep it...
I think it's just...
Keep it local?
I don't think it's necessary. I think that in English football, it's a big enough ecosystem and all the rest of it, and a wealthy enough beast to train referees from here. And I think sometimes cultural differences come into play. I know that doesn't tend to be too much of a problem at
it's massive for refereeing. It's massive for refereeing.
I was going to say, in international tournaments, it doesn't seem to be too much of a thing in terms of the cultural stuff. Perhaps because they would officiate top European competitions where they have experience.
And the VAR thresholds for Premier League and Champions League compared, for example.
But I think it's. I don't know if it's even bordering on arrogant. It could be quite arrogant to think that the top officials would want to come here. I mean,
well, yeah, I think money would talk in that instance.
And Premier League referees earn quite a bit less than they earn the least out of the top 5 leagues in Europe.
Is that right?
Especially in the Liga, where referees can earn almost double what referees here. So unless you want to introduce that,
I
don't think anyone would have a problem with that, though. Paying for a better standard.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the financial issue is part of it.
No, I don't think that as well. But you're saying that that's another layer that would have to happen if you just wanted to bring in foreign referees. You'd have to put in more money. So, there's a cultural reason. I think that I don't get annoyed with the refereeing standards in this country nearly as much as a lot of other people, possibly because I don't support one of the big teams and don't expect
I think that is a big part of it. Yeah.
Andy, I'm going to have a dig at some people. I don't expect every bleeding decision to go up my team's way. Yeah. But I understand there are some big examples where I think, come on. But actually, I think with the introduction of VAR a few years ago now, there are still the odd little teething problem here and there. That was going to happen. I think that it highlights refereeing performances. And as I've said many times, more decisions are correct now, but it is just more infuriating when they're not. And they are working towards that. And I think, Howard Webb is a titan of the refereeing game. He's trying to do this. But to me, it's one of those sort of quick fixes of, let's get other people in where they train them over there and do it. At some point, we've talked about this in the context of English managers. At some point, you have to look after your own house and say, right, come on. This is you could argue short-termism. Why on earth can't we, I appreciate I'm sounding like a bloody politician now. Why can't we train referees in our own country, for crying out loud? We've got the infrastructure, we've got the resources and so on. I think this is a kind of a thing where people think, they won't have club biases and all that kind of stuff. Again, something I don't worry about with referees.
Well, also, that's patently not true because the Premier League is global. Also, it's unrealistic to expect that referees don't support football teams.
Well, indeed, and the thing is, I just think you move the goalposts. I mean, if a referee's like a Juventus fan or something comes over and gives a dodgy decision against Man United, well, people start saying,
habit.
Well, there you go. How is this benefiting? Don't let him officiate Newcastle United. He might start giving them it all. But real soft spot for Notts County, that guy. No, but where does it? He gives a decision against Man United. Man United fans, I'm not saying they are going to do this, I'm not saying they have been doing this, but I'm using it as an example. Do you remember when they had that rivalry back in the day? Does he still remember that? I think that I understand why people are entertaining this, but I ultimately think it's a load of bollocks, and I think it would be a real shame if foreign referees were introduced because of a lack of trust in our own referees.
I mean, I personally wouldn't have a problem with foreign referees coming over, but you're right. If the context was that we've kind of hit some panic button and had to get in sort of specialists from other areas.
And that is the context.
That is, yeah, indeed. And now the reason that I kind of agree with you, Marcus, to be honest, and the reason for that is that even good referees can be considered to be bad referees by fans who've been on the end of tight calls that have gone against them. And I I don't think we'll ever get to a point in this country where it's universally agreed that refereeing standards are good.
Any country.
True, any country. Because we see all the time about the percentages of decisions that are considered to have been got right now, and you can disagree with that and say, well, of course, they're checking their own work and marking their own work and giving themselves glowing scores, etc., etc. But I don't really go in for the idea that they inflate their own quality too much. The problem is, I think, we love moaning in this country. We will always love moaning in this country. Referees are the traffic wardens of sport, aren't they? They're always going to be a target of people who want to moan. They're like the Ed Sheeran of football, even though Ed Sheeran now himself is the Ed Sheeran of football. It's just an easy target.
That's harsh on Ed.
No, but that's the whole point, isn't it? People are regularly harsh on Ed because he's an easy target.
Right.
He's just like he's a punchline for things quite unfairly.
But he's
sometimes.
not like
When James Corden is right there.
Yeah, but Ed Sheeran is not perceived to be running on stage of smaller bands that you're enjoying and go, no encore here. Do you know what I mean?
But I just mean in the way that people are unnecessarily mean about him a lot on the internet.
Okay,
That's what I mean.
okay.
But so I just think referees are always going to be a target for this, particularly because football is a very, very emotive thing. Now, the state you are in at a football match, even if you're a very measured person in an emotional sense, if you're invested in it, is wildly different from the state that you will be an hour before it. And people are always going to just go, at something that, probably is a very reasonable free kick. We all see it all the time at our teams. Our team will give away a free kick. It will be the most obvious free kick you've ever seen. It's probably a booking in some cases, and everyone's going, "What are you doing?" Yeah. And it's just referees are always going to be the kind of focal point of that ire, and it won't matter where they're from. I mean, how often have we seen after an England game or something, a referee's been, made a decision that is often correct. Or when everyone was like, Ronaldo winked at the referee. He's like, Wayne Rooney stamped on a man's balls.
No, he never.
That's why.
I'm yet to see
that's
any
why he was
evidence
sent
of that.
off. It wasn't because of a wink.
To see any evidence of that, Jimmy.
But your point about there being a cultural difference, I think is really, really important in terms of, and we talked about the thresholds of VAR and stuff between Premier League and Champions League. It's just adding an extra layer of misunderstanding between the officials and the players, coaching staff, and then again the supporters. Now, I think if you look at the leagues that have gone in for this in the recent past, so you look at
hiring foreign referees.
Yeah, so you look at Portugal getting overseas officials, a Turkish Super League as well. What have those?
I knew they would be into it.
Yeah, but what have those two leagues got in common? They're the most paranoid environments.
Well, I was about to say
that suspect match officials, and that is the problem when we're talking about the context. And when Jim was talking about the context, I think we as a footballing culture are getting closer to the countries who think it's all a massive conspiracy,
which is a great shame.
Which is really bad. Yeah. Is really bad for the game. Now, I think with the introduction of VAR, one of the most irritating things, like Jim was saying, was the fact that we spend, I think, at least 50% of the discussion we have on VAR is arguing about decisions that are technically correct. Yeah. And is it in the spirit of the game? That's not a discussion that's had elsewhere. Because as I've said before, different countries need different things out of their match officiating. But in terms of that, in terms of how things are interpreted, I think there's quite a good example with, I don't want to keep going on about VAR, but in terms of video evidence, and it's been drawn to us recently with, Jose Mourinho sticking his laptop in front of the camera and all that sort of stuff. They kind of used video evidence in Spain way before everywhere else, because the fourth official would look at the monitor, look at a replay, and then wave over to the referee and do that quite a lot. Now, it was seen in England, for example, that you couldn't do that. That was beyond the remit of the fourth official, that you shouldn't be using video evidence because it wasn't part of the rules of the game officially at the time. But actually, the way that is worded, the fourth official is there to do all the admin on the touchline and to draw the referee's attention to stuff that him and the assistants might have missed. Now, it doesn't say that you can't use the little monitor to do that. It doesn't say that you can either. And that shows, I think, how different the perception of what the referee's role is is in different European countries that play in the same competitions in a lot of cases.
Yes. Well, yeah. And
but in the Premier League, it is all about keeping up the tempo, isn't it?
Well, it is. And,
it's not about 100% accuracy, despite the fact that people will argue that.
Yeah, and look at just look at red cards. The amount of red cards between the top 5 leagues in Europe. You will see that I'm not saying leagues are dirty, but you'll see how sometimes officiating can be a little bit different on a more national level. And it was huge pressure on a foreign referee to come in, because again, their name and who they are would be suddenly thrust into the spotlight. And I tell you something, if people are looking for that to be some perfect solution, boom, that it will quickly change and it will quickly go south.
It's like that any penalty, for example, any penalty that's given away in Spain for handball, you have to caution the player.
Yeah, I think back in the day, there was a bit of this chat when Pierluigi Collina was retiring. As a referee, but then there was chat about, I think he was 44 or however old he was, and they retire slightly earlier in Serie A than they do in the Premier League. And there was 2 years he had left or something where he could. Well, could we get him in the Premier League? Because he was seen as the guy. And obviously got to the very top level as a referee, hugely respected. But then Everton fans will remember a decision that he made. Was it in the Champions League preliminary round, or I forget where it was.
Villarreal.
Was it that game? Yeah. Anyway, I know Everton fans don't think very highly of him, and that is it's one
perfect
example.
Illustration,
but exactly, it's kind of like, well, we all seen this guy, and obviously, if you see them refereeing teams that are not your teams, you don't have the skin in the game. Exactly. You don't have that emotional attachment.
And I would go back again and again and again to what Jim said quite rightly about it's about the context in which you're doing it, because the idea actually of a cultural exchange between referees from different countries, that can only be beneficial to the standard of refereeing.
Yes.
But is the Premier League the place to test it out?
It's also worth...
Championship.
League Cup.
Yeah, everyone's really chill there.
League Cup is the answer, isn't it?
It's always the answer for experiments. That's why we have it, to give it a new lease of life. Just throw in weird rules. It's worth pointing out that there is nothing stopping this happening already, because as we've mentioned already, Jared Gillett is from Australia. We do have a foreign referee in the Premier League, and I'm going to assume there's nothing in the rule book that says you can only have one. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually do see this a bit more in future. I don't think there'll be an influx, but I think gradually we might get one or two more.
Yeah, I mean, when the Australian chap Jared Gillett came over, there was like a teensy little bit of not fanfare, but I think because he'd mic'd himself up in an A-League game or something. Yeah, and then he quickly just was reverted to type about him, and he joined the rest of the other pack of referees. And
ideally, you don't notice them, do you?
Yeah.
And he's been very good at that, I suppose.
Well, Andrew on Instagram has suggested a dedicated St George's style refereeing academy that young people can graduate out of.
In terms of that, do you know what the game needs more than anything? Specialist VAR officials.
Well, now, yeah.
That's what it...
That will come over time, though.
It's such a different job. Why is it not happening now? I find that unbelievable that there's no sense that, referees who've been doing their job in a certain way might struggle a bit with a different sort of... And, of course, let's be honest, older people who don't have such an intuitive relationship to technology as well, it should be a specialist job.
Something for you to set up, Andy. You've got the rest of the weekend to do it.
Yeah, right.
We have a question from Hans on Instagram. Hans says, we heard an awful lot of booing from fans of Spurs and West Ham at the weekend following their defeats. Last weekend, of course. Obviously, both teams haven't been playing well, and fans are understandably frustrated. However, I can't help but feel that booing your own players and manager isn't the way to improve things on the pitch. Do you guys ever feel like booing your own team is ever acceptable?
I've never booed at a game, and I expect I never will. But I think it's whenever this sort of conversation comes up, I think it is important to kind of point out that people do have the right to express themselves however they choose at a game. They pay a lot of money. It's something they're very, very invested in. And I also think, as we mentioned in the answer to the earlier question, it's a heightened state of emotion at a football match, and you aren't realistically going to get 60,000 or however many thousand people keeping their emotions in check enough to go, you know what, I don't know if booing is going to help the team here. So I personally don't like it. but I understand sort of why it happens sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Hans finishes obviously with the question saying, is it ever acceptable? So you've talked about what people have paid their money and all that kind of stuff. But I suspect the feeling of the question, if you like, is more, I can't help but feel that booing your own players and manager isn't the way to.
It's counterproductive,
which I think is absolutely right. I think I would go. Would I? I think it's incredibly counterproductive. I think that it is. Generally, I think it's. Generally, not specifically, but generally, I think it's pretty poor behaviour. I don't think it's poor in terms of abuse and all that kind of stuff. So hear me right on that.
Yeah, unacceptable is like discriminatory stuff,
which is why I think
personal and abusive stuff. Isn't
indeed,
it?
Which is why I think the spirit of the question is talking about helping things improve on the pitch. So I think that I suspect that if fans think a player or a team are not trying, that would be a booable offence. But I think the vast majority of, suspicions with regards to that are not accurate.
No, they're not. But, I mean, there's one thing that drives this, and I guess maybe it's sort of what Hans is getting at in the question, the fact that it seems to happen more.
Yes.
And if it happens more, why does it happen more? The reason it happens more is because people get charged an awful lot of money to get into games.
There is that.
That is a huge part of it.
It's a big sacrifice every year for a lot.
But when we were talking about conspiracy theories a while ago, obviously very different subject or topic to this, I talked about one of the reasons I think is because, and I extrapolated out, and please listen to that episode, is about the hyper-consumerist culture that we have in this country, and obviously I say generally in the Western world. And I think this is a part of it. I've paid my money, I want to be entertained, and so on. I don't think that is a completely unfair thing, an unfair feeling, as Jim sort of already pointed to. But I think with that consumerist thing, that does mean that the prices are probably going to be high. Not definitely, but they shouldn't be, but they are. And I think that kind of feeds into the point, Andy, is that people feel like, well, crying out loud, if that's going to happen. For me, personally,
they know how much the players are being paid as well.
Yeah, and also as well, I think that certain clubs, if you're used to certain standards and the money that they've been sloshing around, like transfer fees for this, that and the other, or certain players are getting huge wages, yet they don't look like they're putting a bit of a shift in, or it's not quite working. You can understand the frustration, but I still think that booing is not the answer.
Although fans, need to be allowed to register their displeasure.
Yeah, but no one's arguing that. I just think it's not the answer.
Well, but what I would say is that isn't booing the clearest way to do it. It's almost... It's an almost like quaintly Victorian way of registering your displeasure. Isn't it?
It's like the white handkerchiefs in the stands in La Liga. It's like that. And really, your match day is the only time you really get to express that opinion directly to the club. Because sometimes those people aren't booing the players.
Yeah.
They're booing the board. They're booing the way that they've dealt with the transfer window or haven't dealt with the transfer window.
So I get that. I suppose for me, it's like if you're booing the team, that is counterproductive. And if you're booing the manager, because I don't think the team and the manager are, again, in the vast majority of examples, being half-arsed about stuff. Booing the board and all that kind of stuff, that's way more understandable if things are being a bit of a shit show at your club. But as you say, Jim, I get it. I suppose I think about let's think about it on an international level. There was some boos for Southgate during the Euros, and obviously there was, I think, was it 3 beer cups?
Molyneux is always the one I think of.
That's
Hungary. And there's nice to hear your own fans boo you from Wayne Rooney.
Yeah, exactly.
That was,
so again, people have paid a lot of money to go and watch England play, and if they feel that it is very conservative and very constrained, and actually, a 0-0 against Slovenia is not really what I came out here for. Again, I understand it. I'm not calling these people dickheads for doing it. But you are signing up to a thing called football and attending a football match. It is not seeing you're not going to see a theatre production.
Sure, but
you're not seeing a band or something like that where it has to be like really obvious and crap for it not to happen.
If you go see the new James Bond movie,
yes,
and he's just sorting out his mortgage, You've got a right to be annoyed at that.
Indeed. So I do think that variable about football, about like
that's the key word.
That just can happen.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I mean,
and look how pissed off
right.
Rooney and co were.
People do forget that there is a difference. I think
I've given you a specific circumstance there. Right?
Yeah, you're right. But on the other hand, I do think there's a difference between booing and people doing that thing that they always do now where they go, oh yeah, we lost 4-0 away, the players should be paying us back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and I think
that's nonsense.
So I suppose for me, that kind of culture is just a bit
I think those two things are distinct.
Yeah,
right.
Personally.
I also think that that's maybe a symptom of the internet where one person has said that, and it's, like phrases and lines of thought go viral,
become
buzzwords
as
much as memes do in the culture we're in. So you get a lot of that nonsense from people who don't possibly even mean it, but just feel like this is the appropriate time in which you share that because that's how the herd works.
Like a throwaway comment that becomes a campaign.
Yeah, essentially. So I suppose the question is it ever acceptable? I think possibly, to kind of explore this idea, maybe the one time where it might actually be useful to the team, and this is perhaps a quite abstract interpretation of that, is when a defeat is so bad, like a team get pumped 7-0 at their rivals or something like that. That
so you're just about Man United fans here, yeah?
Well, Arsenal have experienced this at Old Trafford,
okay.
with an 8-2,
yeah, and
obviously that 7-0 at Anfield was dreadful for Man United fans, but the players, they already know it's terrible.
Yeah.
Those boos are perhaps
kick up
an extra added little layer for those players to think this can never happen again.
Yeah.
We have to use this as a positive experience. I think that's the only time where it might actually be kind of truly warranted.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, again, context is crucial. Being a Fulham fan, what are you booing for?
You've had a lovely day.
Whereas I'm quite sure if I was an Everton fan, I would have booed at some point in my life. Do you know what I mean? Andy, AFC Wimbledon?
I guess when you get to the point where you feel like the club is taking advantage of you massively.
Yeah, okay.
That's
AFC Wimbledon. You're not booing them, are you?
I'm not a booer.
Not one of the boo boys?
No.
Okay.
We've got one here from Richard on Discord. What is the biggest sliding doors moment in the history of each of your respective teams, or in football generally?
Oh, what a question.
For example, asking as a Man City fan if Paul Dickoff hadn't equalised in the 94th minute of the Division 2, now League 1 of course, playoff final in 1999, oh glorious, City would have stayed in the third tier. They wouldn't get back-to-back promotions, keep extrapolating it out and they don't get taken over, they don't shift the landscape of English football, no Aguero, no treble, all of the stuff that nobody likes doesn't come with it either. What are the equivalent moments for your clubs and for football?
I think that I've got an England.
You must have an England.
Well,
one,
I mean, there's a couple of England ones
from this week.
From this week, yeah. If the ball doesn't ricochet off Lacedemus and go in, do England only get a draw? Do they only get a draw in Greece? Changes our Friday ramble. Gascoigne not getting his foot on the end of that one against Germany. He scores that England win. They play, I think I've said this before on the show, they play Czech Republic in the final. Yeah. Let's assume that they would win that game. Or let's assume they wouldn't lose a penalty shootout in that final. So the whole penalty hoodoo thing, they beat Spain in a penalty shootout in 1996, and they go on and they win the tournament, and boom. That changes, I think, a lot of chat around the England team, and I think there.
I think the penalty thing would have come to haunt us at some point because of our approach to it.
You don't know. You don't know. I mean,
here, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, another sliding doors moment is, you could say, with Gareth Southgate's England against Colombia, when Jordan Henderson has his penalty saved by David Ospina. I forget which Colombian player it was. Then goes and hits the crossbar straight after. England, they're in it. If he
let off,
he puts that. If he scores that, and England go out to Colombia in the second round. A lot of the good work that I think, some people would say, oh, brilliant, we'd have a new man, and the Southgate haters. Well, okay, but it's a sliding doors moment. But I think the most incredible answer I've ever heard to this question was, of course, our friend Jonathan Wilson, who once we were doing a little live show, and he said that Netherlands versus Argentina in the 1978 World Cup, of course, Argentina win it 3-1 after extra time. And that game it gives a real sense of national pride, and basically was a bit of a shot in the arm for the military junta that were in charge. And he said that Netherlands hit the post in extra time.
Rob Rensenbrink, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, there's the knowledge. So anyway, if that is right, I'll assume it is, hits the post. Now, if he puts that away and Netherlands win the game, do you get that? And he basically extrapolated it out and suggested you wouldn't have had the Falklands War with Argentina.
Amazing.
If they'd have won that game. So with that in mind, Jim, what do you got?
Richard has specifically asked about our clubs. I think can give a few examples of that. I think when Chelsea beat Arsenal in the Champions League quarter-final. I think it was
Wayne Bridge.
Yes. It was
my
2004.
goodness. Yeah.
So it was the Invincible Premier League Invincible.
It was.
It really is Ranieri week, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, that was the year that Porto won it.
Yes.
And it would have been Monaco, wouldn't it, in the semi-final?
Yeah.
And you look at those two games and think, they would have had a really good chance there.
Yeah.
Fairly recently, William Saliba and Takahiro Tomiyasu getting injured in the same game against Sporting meant Arsenal went to Man City with Rob Holding in the back line. But I think the biggest one is that in 1986, Alex Ferguson turned down the chance to manage Arsenal. He said about that, the thing about the Arsenal offer was that they wanted an answer right away, but I couldn't give them one because I was going to the World Cup in Mexico with Scotland. And he'd also had offers from Wolves and Spurs. Ferguson said he spoke to his then chairman, Dick Donald. Love that. I said to him, maybe it's time to leave. And he says, don't talk like that. You've got a great setup here. You should only go to one club, Man United. So I never budged until that came along. It's in the 80s, so I wonder if there's a bit of the famous Ferguson kind of self-mythologizing there, because obviously Liverpool were the dominant force. But yeah, I mean, that would have been a seismic change for English football, where he essentially, however it had gone at Arsenal, you would think he wouldn't have ended up at Man United.
Talking of seismic changes for English football, I think of the last day, if we're thinking of our own club, of 1999-2000 season. So Wimbledon start the day, despite a disastrous run, because of John Hartson's last-minute equaliser against Aston Villa on the penultimate day. Wimbledon start the day outside the relegation zone. They're going to Southampton. Bradford are at home to Liverpool, who need a result to get in the Champions League. So Wimbledon just have to match Bradford's result. Bradford score really early on in that game against Liverpool. Now, later on, Wimbledon losing the second half to, I think it's a Wayne Bridge free kick and Marion Pajas at Southampton.
All over the place today.
You know what I mean? It's Ranieri and Bridge week.
Yeah.
And the thing is, obviously, it was like not great getting relegated at the time. But I wonder if Wimbledon stay up that season, which was very plausible on the final day of the season, if Liverpool had won at Bradford, as you know, they needed a result, as we said that day, to get themselves into the Champions League, which is a very plausible state of affairs. Wimbledon's result wouldn't even have mattered. They would have stayed up anyway. If Wimbledon stay up in 2000, is the move to Milton Keynes a success?
Well, I wondered if you were going to go that far with it.
If they've got a Premier League team, because of course they're always saying, "Oh, we're going to bring Premier League football to Milton Keynes." Now, which is a virgin market for it, I suppose. But obviously, it's not given how whether you're a fan of the move or agnostic or whatever.
I am a fan of the move.
There's no argument that the whole MK project has been horrendously managed. For them to start with an incredible stadium and a second tier place, to end up 2 divisions below, with all those advantages, to end up 2 divisions below in the same division as the Phoenix Club, who started at tier 9, is kind of ridiculous. But if they'd have started in the Premier League, would that be completely different?
Yes, I like that, Andy. I mean, these moments that people talk about, I mean, you're right to kind of ponder on that, because I think that would be quite a thing.
It's funny because when I look backwards, I think, well, yeah, it didn't feel great getting relegated. Obviously, it felt a million times worse when your club gets moved 2 years later. But actually, in retrospect, those horrible things, particularly the 2002 thing, you can't have any regret over it because it's paved the way for something extraordinary to happen. So I guess that's another sliding doors moment. If it had been 2-1 against Wimbledon moving to Milton Keynes rather than in favour of with the independent arbitration panel, AFC Wimbledon never would have been created, maybe. And, you know, these have honestly been the best football sporting years of my life.
So I did a little bit of a digging around for kind of other kind of sliding doors moments. And this one I want to bring to your attention. On the final day of the 1986-87 season, Torquay were seconds away from being the first team to be relegated out of the Football League. But a German shepherd called Bryn, which was a police dog, attacked Torquay fullback Jim McNichol as he ran down the touchline. Now, in the injury time added for the treatment to him, Torquay scored an equaliser and it kept them up. Lincoln went down instead.
That is mad.
That is
good, isn't it? I think if you wanted one club specific for me in Fulham, I suppose, again, it's not just the ramifications for your club, but Fulham away to Man City. Under Roy Hodgson, of course, the famous 3-2 victory where Fulham were 2-0 down at half-time against a better side and going out of the Premier League, or getting relegated. They would turn it around and win 3-2, and then results would go their way, and they would manage to stay up. But there's a moment in that game at 2-1 with Fulham where they're given a penalty, and some might think it was a bit soft. Some people, but being given a penalty which is not that obvious is always a bit fortunate. And Danny Murphy hits the shot, Joe Hart saves it, and it goes back to Murphy and he hits the rebound. And there's a few there, and then of course they need Kamara to score in the 90th minute, and that gets them going. If Fulham are relegated, does Roy Hodgson go on to manage? Do they get rid of him as Fulham manager? Does he go on to manage Liverpool? I'm sure Liverpool fans are probably thinking, if Joe Hart had just caught that penalty, or does he manage England? There's a whole thing there about Hodgson, and obviously I know Fulham stayed up and they were in the division, then they would get relegated and so on. But there's another one for you. I have a question here on X from BTNT. Having read Andy's excellent report on FC St Pauli, what clubs are there that you guys have a soft spot for? You've got a soft spot for St Pauli. Is it just the sausage train, or is it the whole vibe, Andy?
I think it's the willingness to find a way to exist on your own terms in modern football, which is extraordinary.
Which is why I have a soft spot for Real Madrid.
Yeah, exactly.
They just do what they want, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. It's sort of, it's all about the George Bernard Shaw thing about bending life to your own will, isn't it? But I don't know. The St Pauli thing, as BTNT, thank you very much, by the way, refers to, what the article's about is that they are obviously a little bit out of their depth financially, having been promoted to the top flight for the first time in 13 years. Their potential workaround, they are selling their stadium, Millantor, to a cooperative of their fans. So essentially, the fans are buying the stadium. They're hoping to raise up to 30 million euros, and they're going to finance themselves that way. So they stick to their ideas, their community focus, their principle, but manage to make some money to help themselves continue to exist. I mean, it's not about catching up with Bayern or Dortmund. It's just about being able to exist in the top flight, because the whole time they've been down, the last couple of seasons they've been pushing towards promotion, but there are a lot of seasons where they nearly got relegated to the third. So it's not just about existing in the Bundesliga, it's about existing actually in a professional context, really.
So it is sort of like when Madrid City Council bought Real Madrid's training ground off of them and then just gave it back to them. It's kind of similar, isn't it? You're right,
exactly
you were right
to
make the comparison.
Exactly
Jim, thank you. So you have a soft spot, presumably, for this team due to
I admire them.
And some reasons why we have soft spots for teams, or we admire them, whichever word you want to use, is because maybe you went there on holiday and you had a good time, that kind of thing, and you saw them play or whatever. But sometimes it is just simply, I like their kit, or I saw them in an entertaining game, or whatever it is. I have
Tigres for signing Andre Pierre Gignac.
Oh, yeah. I've got a Tigres shirt.
Do you really?
Yeah.
You like it?
Wow, me too.
You like some shirts. What about Yunnan Pumas, just for their shirt?
Yeah. Oh, God.
Specifically, is it the
2016 home and away?
Home and away.
Have you got a mini Mexican collection going on?
I do, yeah. I've got a Pumas one, a Tigres one, and a Club America one. I don't think I've got any more.
You love...
There is this shop in downtown LA, a Mexican football shop, where they have such a range of gear.
Andy,
you would love
if you're going that far, you might as well just go to Mexico. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you should go right to the border. And there's a guy there.
I didn't say San Diego.
True. But in the last few years, I've developed a little soft spot for a team. So basically, this means I just have a little glance for their result now. So in Serie A, I think there's a lot of teams over the years we remember watching Italian football in the 90s, of course, and Channel 4 and all that business. And AC Milan were the team that I used to like because basically they were one of the best teams. They're not the best teams. Juventus, they're one of the best teams.
There's something about AC Milan though that really stood out as like
the kit, the players they had. They to me that they were more flary,
grand about them.
But I think the era that we grew up in, they seemed like end of the 80s, start of the 90s. They seemed like football nirvana, didn't they?
There was, but I mean Juventus came along, of course. But there was something about them that I liked, rightly or wrongly. A lot of people have a soft spot for Fiorentina, literally because of the colour of the kit.
Yeah.
I think that is a given. There's one or two others. Again, Sampdoria's kit was always a popular one. But
it's funny how we're talking around Serie A here. Again, it's very much a product of our generation, isn't it?
Of course. But I went to see the Turin derby. Don't worry, it's not Juventus I have a soft spot for. Okay, spoilers. And it was at the. I suppose this is kind of a right old slight against them. I went to watch the Turin derby. Was it 2 years ago? Anyway. And it was at the Juventus Stadium, right? But I developed a soft spot for Torino as a result because we were sat fairly near the away fans, but they were just being dicks the whole time, like in a funny kind of I'm removed from this on a number of levels. But it was 4-2 to Juventus, and Torino had them going for a bit. And then I also went up Superga Hill and saw the whole Grand Il Torino monument, of course, for those who died and so on. And I suppose again it was just one of those trips for whatever reason it touched me. And for right and wrong reasons, so I have a look at Torino's results now when I'm sort of scanning the continent. So I suppose you could say that was a soft spot.
Yeah, very much.
I haven't bought a kit or anything.
Very much in the spirit of it. Torino were a funny one for me because I know they had a great side many decades ago.
Was it late 40s, early 50s? I think
still spoken about with reverence. But in my head, they have a much higher status in Italian football than they actually do because they were the first team I saw on Football Italia.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But they are they're a bit like Everton or West Ham, aren't they? They're always sort of in the league usually and so on, but they're never going to win anything. They're never going to kick on.
Can I throw in Sevilla because of the anthem?
Andy, you can throw in Sevilla because most people have got a soft spot for them because if you've been there, you love the place. But also...
you could prefer Betis.
You could, but...
But for me, it's the anthem.
Yeah, the anthem...
It's amazing when they just kill the sound on it and... In any home game, they could be playing Real Madrid, they could be playing Almeria. The way the fans sing it, and it just flows out of the stands.
Some people say Betis have a better atmosphere at their stadium.
Yeah, I think it's debatable, isn't it? I think it's close.
Two great clubs, though.
Yeah, it's a very atmospheric football city.
Yeah.
Beautiful city.
Yeah, it's the anthem that does it for me.
The fact, though, that they're...
Which is funny, because it sounds like a really old anthem. It's only about 20 years old.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
That is interesting. Yeah. I love the fact that their relationship with the Europa League. They're never going to win the Champions League. They don't have the finances for it and all that.
They're never winning the Europa League again, let me tell you.
Oh, really, Andy? Well, let's let them decide that because...
Not in my lifetime, anyway.
Yeah, it is up to them.
It feels like it's up to them, doesn't it?
Yeah, not in your lifetime.
They're in a state.
Speaking of Spanish football teams, though, I think Athletic Club, Athletic Bilbao, to you or I, who want to know where the club is.
I love the fact you a bit of reference there.
Yeah, just deal with that. Yeah. Cut that off at the pass. Just the Basque-only policy, how does it work?
It's incredible.
How do they make it work? It is absolutely phenomenal.
Through a lot of rule bending.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, but still, though, even with the
it's
rule
still
bending,
impressive.
Yeah,
it's still
exactly.
Yeah. Well, the reason that Real Sociedad, for example, in the late 80s, take like John Aldridge, the late Dalian Atkinson, Kevin Richardson, people like that, they're like, well, we have to get foreign players because they're nicking all the Basque ones because they've always been the most powerful club in the region, Athletic. I'm not saying that makes what they do any less admirable, but there are bending of rules and there are nicking of other clubs' players because at that point, Real Sociedad started taking on foreigners, but they wouldn't take on non-Basque Spaniards.
I see,
which is quite interesting.
What about the Bilbao barge, though? Come on. I think you're back on board with that one.
Yeah, go on then.
I won't be buying their shirt.
Yeah. And I've
stand corrected.
In the last few moments, I've developed a soft spot for MK Dons.
In the last few minutes. That's not true now, is it?
Yeah. What about Amiens, Andy? I've got a soft spot for them.
You do, don't you?
Because Andy Carroll recently played for them.
Yes.
And also, as I often say, the stadium reminds me of Jurassic Park.
Yes.
And you took me there once.
Yes.
That's it. That's all you need.
It was you, me and Thierry Henry.
He was. Oh, he's Monaco manager.
He was at the time, wasn't he?
They lost 2-0.
What a weary figure he cut.
Falcao brackets 2 pens brackets.
Yes.
How about that?
Monaco were one of those teams I thought I had a little bit of a soft spot for because
Because of the tax-free regime.
And then you remember where they're from.
because the kit's cool. They had some cool players.
Yeah,
they feel like underdogs, and
stadium.
then you learn about Monaco. It's like, I don't know that I can consider them
Have
underdogs.
you got a soft spot for Al Nasser as well? Right, let's finish with this from Jacko on Discord. When managers eventually retire from coaching, what do you think would be your dream gig for them? I love this. It's not like you're a manager. What are they for them? I was thinking maybe Jose Mourinho working for Kellogg's doing ads for Special K.
He loves an advert, doesn't he?
Yeah, any other?
As does Jurgen Klopp.
suggestions?
Oh, my goodness. It feels when you're in Germany sometimes.
Another one who could do Special K.
Yeah, when you're in Germany sometimes, it feels like, you cannot escape from him. But
He's a big man. That's a terrifying thought. But he's just looming over everyone.
yeah, exactly. No, I would like any former Napoli coach to work, when they retire, work in one of the pubs outside the ground. They call them pubs. They're actually like mobile food stalls, like you get out Italian Stadium.
Oh, I love a bit of Don Carlo doing that.
They're all named pubs.
Yeah.
And you've got Jacko Pub, which is named after Michael Jackson. Yeah, you've
Not
got
the guy who submitted the question.
You've got pub. Well, that's what made me think of it. Actually, Jacko made me think of it. Thank you, Jacko.
Is Janet represented?
So no, you have
Latoya?
a picture of Michael Jackson, and you have a picture of Maradona on the side of this thing. It's really extraordinary. And next to it, you have Pub Barry White.
Ooh,
very weird.
Although,
as well.
Would Rino Gattuso? You'd burn the food and you'd be like, what the hell is this? And he's like, well, sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. Oh, right, you've done me there, haven't you?
Cooked on one side. What did I just say?
Yeah, that's nice. That is nice. I think...
You'd have service with a smile with him and Antonio Conte, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you could do.
would.
You could.
I think Steve Bruce would make a very good soft play area. Obviously, he'd be wearing some sort of spongy suit. He doesn't even need to be awake. I just think he looks very comfortable.
I think so too. I think Neil Warnock could be just a good boss to have anywhere, but obviously not in football. So he'd be quite relaxed. He's quite involved. Imagine if you would, don't worry, right, just get the report in at the end of next week. It's fine. Don't worry about that. But have a good weekend, but be disciplined.
Yeah, I know. I think he'd be quite disciplinarian in a day-to-day basis.
I don't know. I think it's because it's not in football. I think this is a free hit, so I'll just go around and get everybody.
Maybe.
Is Mick McCarthy retired? Because
you can still talk about the dream gig for him.
If not, I think he'd be an excellent doctor. I think he'd be good at breaking delicate news to people in as like sensitive a way as possible.
Okay, I think Pep Guardiola tackling climate change.
God, if he could focus on it in the way he focuses on football, we're absolutely fine.
We would.
Oh God,
just anything like Pep Guardiola coming up with new flavours of ice cream. You'd be like, I didn't. But it would just be brilliant. You know what I mean?
He could invent a new colour.
Yes, he could.
I think Thomas Frank would make a very good unorthodox detective.
Yeah. If you had someone on the case and Tommy Frank came up and went, right, I'm here, you look at it in his eye and you think this is the guy for us. Yeah.
He gets results. Sean Dyche, metal drummer.
Yes.
Okay.
Just got that energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, the drummer's allowed to have short hair in a metal band, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, I think he'd look good in a cut-off shirt. I assume he's quite muscular. I don't know this because you never see his arms, but I feel like he's going to suit that. Yeah. He loves his music as well. I don't know if he's into his metal, but I reckon he'd be good at...
Yeah, so he'd have something a bit angry.
Yeah.
Something a bit angry.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Tim Sherwood could just apply for The Apprentice over and over and over and over again.
Oh, that's a bit of a dig on Tim. I think that's unfair. Yeah. Andy, you've met Tim Sherwood. You said he was really sound.
Yeah, I love him.
No, come on. You said he was a nice bloke. You said he was good company.
He's
So
great
defend him
company.
then.
He's great company. He's allowed to have his opinion on it.
Well, obviously.
I didn't really express an opinion. I just think it suits that sort
All right. And in the spirit of that, Jose Mourinho, a dictator. Thanks very much for listening to the Football Ramble Mailbag, part of the Acast Creator Network. Remember to get your questions in for next week's episode and follow us on X, TikTok and Instagram at Football Ramble and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, And.
Thanks,
Jim.
Thank you.
Have a lovely Saturday.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.